Thanks for tuning in to BAFT's first quarter 2021 update. My name is Diana Rodriguez, and I'm here with Tod Burwell, President and CEO of BAFT. Hello, Tod.
Hi, Diana.
Hi, Tod. BAFT's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. How is BAFT planning to commemorate such a significant milestone?
Obviously, we were looking forward to doing something very special, this being our 100th anniversary, but unfortunately, the pandemic has caused us to change our plans. So we were planning to have a celebration, a gala, where we would invite back some of our longtime past presidents and board members and things of that nature. But we've decided we're going to hold off the gala until we can do it safely, which will be next year in May of 2022, where we're planning to host it in Washington, D.C., which is our headquarters. But so this year, what we're going to do is, in place of our typical Europe Council, which is held each year, and our MENA Forum, which is held each year, and our North American Conference, which is held each year, we're going to have a global annual meeting from June 8th to June 10th. And there, we're going to actually celebrate the 100th anniversary of BAFT. And we'll do some nifty things during the course of that virtual program to commemorate the 100 years. And then next year, we'll have the gala where hopefully everyone will be able to come in person.
Looking at BAFT's legacy over the last century, what are some of the association's most noteworthy accomplishments, and what do you foresee for the years to come?
Well, so we actually have, believe it or not, the minutes of the very first BAFT meeting that was held back in 1921 on June 22nd, where there were 10 bankers that came together at the Hotel Cleveland and created what was then known as the Bankers Association for Foreign Trade. And it's quite interesting to me that if you think about it, our initial founding members were from Cleveland, Detroit, and Buffalo. And they were all members of the foreign or international department. But over that 100 years, obviously, BAFT has expanded significantly to where we now have members from nearly 70 countries on 6 continents. So there's been a lot that has happened along the way. Even before my time, the International Advisory Council and the European Advisory Council, they were formed more than 20 years ago. But today, we now have councils that represent North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, MENA. We have members from Australia, and every continent has been represented on the BAFT Board of Directors. So over that period of time, I think there's a lot of accomplishments, some of which we will touch on during our global annual meeting this June, some of which we will share when we have our gala celebration in person next year. But just some of the things that come to mind, you know, going back in 1970, BAFT was very instrumental at the time in working with the US Exim Bank to help create PEFCO. And PEFCO and Exim Bank, as we know, just renewed their relationship again for another 25 years. Throughout the Latin America debt crisis, BAFT was there to support banks. Through the Kazakhstan crisis, we helped to lay out the rationale for prioritizing trade payments over other debt so that banks could be made whole through that crisis. There's been a lot that we've done in recent years on topics such as Basel, on things like financial crime and de-risking, a lot that we're working on now as it relates to supply chain finance and LIBOR transition and so forth. But if you think about it, BAFT also is the conglomeration of several different associations that have merged over time, and they each have had their own milestones. Going back, for example, with IFSA, they established the bank-to-bank compensation rules for US dollar payments. Many banks around the world today are using the BAFT Master Risk Participation and Master Trade Loan Agreement, now the DLPC. So we've had a role in doing policy advocacy. We've had a role in trying to establish standards and providing tools for the industry. And perhaps if I were to personalize it, one of the things that I'm most excited about is our Future Leaders Program, which is currently in its 6th year. And I think as we look forward to the next 100 years, is one of the things that's going to make sure that the association stays fresh, stays current, stays relevant, and will have people that will drive this thing forward.
BAFT recently expanded its online offerings and educational programs. Can you talk to us about the options available for BAFT members and the broader transaction banking community?
Sure. So we had typically conducted workshops, either trade workshops or financial crime compliance workshops, and we had done those in person in many countries. We had started to expand the jurisdictions where we were offering these. And these were one of the educational offerings that we heard was most highly valued because of the back and forth case study nature of the programs and so forth. But in advance of the pandemic, we had started to develop some on-demand programs, which we were happy to release this past year. So we provided a certificate program, which is completely online, one that is for introductory transaction banking, which is absolutely perfect for people who are just coming out of school, just learning about transaction banking, and even for people who have maybe been working in the bank but are new to transaction banking. So that's available. We've also created an online certificate program called Transaction Risk for Trade Professionals. And this incorporates credit risk, it incorporates operational risk, it incorporates risk management from a reputational standpoint, and really provides a comprehensive view of risk, not just for people in the risk function, but really risk from a business perspective. We, of course, have had our relationship with University of Washington in helping to expand their Global Bankers Program. And first-time participants in the Global Bankers Program can also get a discount on their tuition to that program. And that's really an executive education program for international banking. We have a variety of online certification programs that we have provided in partnership with organizations like LIBF and ICC Academy that cover trade compliance, that cover demand guarantees, that cover supply chain finance, Incoterms, and other programs. We have recorded webinars and panel discussions that are available on demand to BAFT members. And we're actively in the process right now of building out many more programs in the payment space, the trade space, in the innovation space, and others.
Certainly a lot of opportunities to look into. We do encourage you to take a look at the BAFT website for more information. So building a global community is one of BAFT's core pillars. How does BAFT continue to foster a global community and bring new members into the fold?
Well, that's a great question, particularly in the midst of a pandemic where, frankly, I have not even been into my office in Washington, D.C. since last year in March. So trying to build a global community while sitting in my home has been a bit of a challenge. But I think one of the ways that we do it is through our regional councils. And we have members that are on the ground in nearly 70 countries. We're actively engaged with other members of the community on initiatives that are relevant in each one of those regions. And so through our activity with the regional councils, we continue to be relevant locally on a global basis and have the opportunity to bring new members into the BAFT community. Some of them come on board because they want to be connected to others in our global community. And some of them come on board because they have an interest in very specific topics. We've had organizations like Goldman Sachs join, and they're standing up and building out a transaction banking capability. And so they very much are going to be a part of this community going forward and want to immerse themselves in all things that are transaction banking. We've been able to welcome back one of our good members, DBS in Los Angeles via Tom McCabe. We've had members of the FinTech community join BAFT because of some of the things that we're doing in the innovation side and in the payment space. Organizations like NanoPay and TraxPay and TickTrade. We've had infrastructure providers like IHS Markit law firms like Sherman and Sterling, and a variety of organizations that have wanted to join the community for different reasons, either relating to document standards that we're providing, guidance papers that we're providing, advocacy around topics, thought leadership that we're providing on topics, or just being part of the community that's trying to solve common problems. So we can't wait until, and I personally can't wait until I can actually get back out in the market and talk with members and talk with member prospects. But we're very fortunate that our community continues to build.
We're well into 2021. Can you walk us through some of the main policy issues that BAFT is focused on?
Sure. So several of the issues are carryover from prior years, so they won't be new in that sense, but they are increasingly important in this year. So for example, the implementation of Basel III, which was extended from a regulatory timestamp, is still an issue for us that we're working actively towards, because each geographic area has to implement Basel III in their own time frame. So we're still very much focused on that. Similarly, with the transition away from LIBOR, we've been very actively working on the implications to the transaction banking business and how banks are going to manage this transition process. Again, while there's been some extension on the back end of this, banks are actively working on how they're going to make this transition this year. So we've been very much engaged with the Fed and other authorities about making that transition plan and trying to get to a forward-looking term rate. We've continued our advocacy around topics such as supply chain finance, around financial crime topics. De-risking continues to be an issue that seems to be coming back in importance in more markets than we had seen before. And our newly formed Global Payments Industry Council is really narrowing down some of the specific topical areas from payments advocacy point of view that we're going to be focusing on. And I think what's new for us, particularly being based in Washington, D.C. with a new administration, is really understanding the changes to the U.S.-China trade dynamic that may come about, or even world trade dynamic that may come about, changes in the priorities of ESG policy and things like that. So there are some new things that are on the plate, but I think there are some consistent things that you have seen us involved in from the last year that will remain priorities for us this year.
Thank you, Tod.